What's up, everybody? Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Overlooked and Underappreciated Live Albums. So this is the series that we do periodically. We've been doing it for a number of months now, where we take a look at some great live albums that don't always get talked about so much when compared to the big popular live albums that everybody knows, right? And these could be live albums from bands that had that definitive live album, but they also have some really good other live albums that nobody ever talks about, or maybe a live album from a band that's not all that big and maybe hardly anybody even knows that it's available. And more obscure live albums, obscure bands, could be maybe some really good boots that are available by particular bands, right? So it could be anything, but it's like these are not the Get Your Yayas Out and Live at Leeds and Made in Japan and Strangers in the Night and Unleashed in the East and all that stuff. These are not the big, well-known live albums that everybody knows and loves, right? These are the live albums that people just don't seem to really talk about all that much, right? So today I've got another 10. We do 10 each episode, right? I cheat a little bit because I've got a couple of instances where I have two from, one specific band. So, but let's get started. And again, these cross over all sorts of different genres, right? So it could be rock, hard rock, metal, fusion, prog, right? Just, whatever it might be, pop. But, the whole thing is that they're overlooked. They're underappreciated, maybe even unknown in some cases, right? So let's take a look at the first one here today. And this is another perfect example of an artist who's got 1 million live albums, tons of them. And some get more attention than others. And I think arguably you can pick any number of overlooked and underappreciated live albums from a guy like Miles Davis, right? But I always there's two of them actually. I just I'll grab the other one. Hold on. Because I think these two are really, really special. But they're from a period in his career that I think is a little impenetrable for some people, right? I'm talking about Agartha and Pangea. Okay, so these, of course, were both recorded in 1976 over in Japan. And this is kind of like the end of that kind of deep funk period, which came after the fusion period, and when Miles was just totally into this whole kind of dark, rhythmic, funky, just whatever it is you call it, right? So these were recorded. Actually, it's 1975. So we've got Pangea was recorded at Osaka Festival Hall on February 1st, 1975. I'll get to the other one in a second. And this features the lineup of Miles, of course, on trumpet and a little bit of organ. Sonny Fortune on soprano, sax, alto sax, and flute. Pete Pardo on guitars, percussion, and synthesizer. Reggie Lucas on guitar. So he had two guitar players in the band at this point in time. Michael Henderson, Fender bass, Al Foster on drums, and Matume on congas, percussion, and all that sort of stuff. So this particular album, and again, these are just basically like these big rhythmic funky jams. You got the 2-disc set here. Side 1 is Zimbabwe, almost 42 minutes long, and then disc 2 is Gondwana, about 47 minutes long. So just enormous amount of music, just 2 tracks, just all these jams. I mean, he was infatuated at the time with funk music, like Parliament and Funkadelic. He was, Jimi Hendrix had already left us, but there was this burning desire within Miles he wanted to do something with Hendrix. So he started grabbing guitar players to play for him that could kind of replicate what he always imagined the music he would make with Jimmy. So here you got these two, Kosi and I've got to draw a blank on his name already. Pete Pardo and Reggie Lucas doing these kind of, crazy wah-wah fuzzed out guitar solos and whatnot, these bluesy guitar solos. And there's just tons of soloing and these deep grooves and rhythms and just this haunting stuff, but just so mesmerizing. So that is Pangea. And then over on Agartha, and this particular one, let me open this up. This was recorded also at the Osaka Festival Hall in Japan. So it was released in 76, but recorded February 1st, 1975. So you had the early show and then the late show, because that's what they did back in the 70s, right? You were a band, you played two two shows. If you were headlining and only your band was playing, you would do an early show, like early evening, and then you come back and play later on. So this is basically the same lineup once again. So right, Miles Davis, Sonny Fortune, Michael Henderson, Pete Cosi, Al Foster, Reggie Lucas, and Batume. And here you get again, maybe a little bit more structured than the other one, right? But here you got Prelude, opens up a Prelude Part 1 and Part 2 right there. That's like 32 minutes between the two of them. You got Maisha is 12 minutes long, and on disc 2 you got Interlude, which is nearly a half hour long, and then the theme from Jack Johnson, which is another 25 minutes long. So just these big sprawling jams, blasts of trumpet from Miles, and to some people this is just like, it's just noisy and it's impenetrable and dissonant and just way too deep funk, but to me, I think this stuff is absolutely fascinating. So yeah, check these out if you haven't. If you're maybe kind of new to Miles and looking to get into some some of his mid-70s stuff before he went to drug exile for a number of years, this is a good place to go. And this kind of takes like the On the Corner stuff, like the studio album, takes that to another level, right? Just crazy deep stuff, music. It's just kind of crazy. All right, so next we're gonna go to Queen. So obviously you have the great Queen Live Killers, which came out in the late 70s. At the time, that was thought of as the quintessential Queen live album. Of course, then they did the Live at Wembley album in the middle of the 80s, the big return for Queen, and to many people, that's like the definitive Queen because it kind of has material from all throughout their career up to that point, a good sampling of everything. And man, Freddie was just in top form there, playing in front of that huge audience, and I totally get it. Both of those albums are great. We're not talking about those today. But there are two others that have come out in more recent years that I think are well worth your attention, especially if you love the early Queen albums, like the first 2 or 3 albums. And that is Queen, A Night at the Odeon, the Hammersmith Odeon. This was from 1973, right? Recorded December 24th, 75. And that is the triumphant return of Queen to the Hammersmith. Great stuff there. And then, in my opinion, possibly even better, and I should have done this one first, but this is Queen Live at the Rainbow, 1974. So again, these came out much later, why they were holding on to these for so long. And this was Live at the Rainbow Theater on the Queen 2 tour, March of 1974. This is a 2-disc set. Then you also have a bonus disc, Queen Sheer Heart Attack Tour, Live at the Rainbow, November 1974. So basically, this is back then when a lot of times bands were releasing albums in the same year or within 12 calendar months of each other. So here you have early in the year, in March, finishing up the Queen 2 tour at the Rainbow, and then coming back later in the year after Sheer Heart Attack is already out, and then playing in November also at the Rainbow Theater. And I mean, the set list is just jam packed, and this is heavy, glammy Queen, right? Bringing the guitar thunder, all sorts of great stuff on here. Father to Son, Ogre Battle, Son and Daughter is on here. A terrific Great King Rat, Keep Yourself Alive, March of the Black Queen is just tremendous on here. Modern Times Rock and Roll, Seven Seas Ride, Keep Yourself Alive. What else you got here? In the Lap of the Gods, Flick of the Wrist. Now I'm Here. So much stuff on here. And this, like I said, is also tremendous. Right, so again, this is Hammersmith Odeon, December 75. You got all the great stuff here. Now I'm Here, Ogre Battle, White Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, Killer Queen is on here, March of the Black Queen. Bring back that Leroy Brown, Brighton Rock, guitar solo, Son and Daughter, Keep Yourself Alive, In the Lap of the Gods, all Seven Seas Arise, see all sorts of stuff. Queen at the top of their game, very early on. Right, it's amazing how masterful they were and how assured of themselves are. And of course, they're wearing the big, long, flowing outfits and everything like that. They just look like nothing else we had seen at that time. So, yeah, both of those are absolutely indispensable. And again, because they were released so much later. I mean, these came out in, 2014 for this one, and the other one came out right 2015. Yeah, 2015. So they released these fairly short from each other, right? Short period of time from each other. But if you're someone who's maybe, a Queen fan from back in the day, but really haven't kept up on anything new they've released from them, from the vaults of late, you need those, both of them. Absolutely amazing. All right, here's another British band that, I think most people do know of this, but for folks watching here in the States especially, Status Quo were never really much of anything here, right? Never a big band here. Yeah, I think most people have heard of them, but only like a select amount of people have actually gone out and really, discovered this band. But back home, right, in Europe, the Status Quo have been enormous for decades. Well, if you've never checked out the music of Status Quo, they're kind of hard-charging boogie rock. There's a lot of really good studio albums. I have a whole bunch of them, right? But to me, the one go-to and their best album, because the versions of the songs on here are just so supercharged and fun and full of life, is Status Quo Live. Quo Live, or Quo Plus Live, however you want to say it. I mean, this is for me. If someone said to me, you have to give up all of your Status Quo albums, you can only keep one, which one would you keep? It'd be this one. Easy. All the songs are kind of heavier on here. They're supercharged. The audience is totally into it. The band is firing on all cylinders. All sorts of great stuff on here. There are better ways in here. Rain is on here 4,500 times. Is on here. Roll Over, Lay Down. Big Fat Mama. Caroline's on here. Bye Bye Johnny. Roadhouse Blues. All sorts of stuff, man. Twin guitars. Just non-stop boogie rock. High energy. Definitely recommend that. All right, we'll go back to Fusion. Well, not back to, because those Miles Davis albums I was talking about really aren't Fusion, so I guess we'll go to Fusion here. So this band, I love them. They're probably my favorite Fusion band of all time, and this particular lineup of this particular band, absolutely amazing. One of the great lineups, one of the great bands of all time as far as like sheer musical skills. Only were together a few short years, and before they split up, right, for a new lineup to become, they released a very cool album, very cool live album recorded in Central Park in New York City. And that band is the Mahavishnu Orchestra. The album is Between Nothingness and Eternity. Why not release a new album where you're debuting all sorts of songs that were not on any of the previous studio albums? Why not? Right? Only Mahavishnu Orchestra would do that. So here you have, and this is from 1973, and of course this is Rick Laird on bass, John McLaughlin on guitar, Jan Hammer on keyboards, Jerry Goodman on violin, and the great Billy Cobb on drums. You've got the 12-minute long trilogy suite, which is comprised of The Sunlit Path, La Mer de la Mer, and Tomorrow's Story, Not the Same. You've got Sister Andrea, 8 minutes and change, and then the Herculean epic Dream, 21 minutes and change, right? So you've got all this brand new blistering music, and the playing on here is uncanny. I mean, there are some exchanges going on between like Cobham and McLaughlin that are like holy shit moments. So good. But, for years and years and years, a lot of us were kind of like, well, I know they didn't just play 40 minutes at this show, right? Where's the rest of it? So they never released the whole concert. Well, they put out a box set like not that long ago that included a bonus disc that had all of the unreleased tracks from that show. And I want to thank George Lemay for hooking me up with this. And that's the unreleased tracks from Between Nothingness and Eternity from the Mahavishnu Orchestra live, and that's it right here. So here you get all the rest. It's indispensable, right? Because then you get Hope here. You have all the songs that are familiar, right? So Hope and Awakening's on here. You know, One World, or One Word, sorry. Stepping Tones is on here. Vital Transformation, which kills on here. And The Dance of Maya also kills, right? So now you've got the live album that this should have always been, because you got the new stuff they were working on. Oh, that's this. I always get screwed up because, of course, when I look at myself on camera, it's the opposite of everything I'm actually doing. You get the new stuff that they were working on that they had prepared for you, which would come out later, the Lost Trident sessions, right? The studio material. But here you get all the stuff that they were working on, and then all kind of like their favorite selections from the two studio albums. So yeah, this now becomes the ultimate Mahavishnu Orchestra live album, right? Indispensable. All right, next up, let's go to something way more recent. A band that I love, and again, we are in we're in a time right now, and probably you could say the last 30 years, where live albums don't really mean all that much anymore. I think the era of the live album was probably from like the late 60s through like the mid-late 80s. where people kind of gave a shit about live albums. Now it's like it doesn't really matter anymore because, you can go on YouTube and there's the millions of live albums, right? Because there's millions of live performances and recordings from all your favorite bands are there for you to check out whenever you want. So bands releasing a live album, and because, back in the day, a live album is like, you either went to see a band live or you bought a live album if they released one, right? And for people who didn't go to concerts much, you waited for that live album to experience what the band was all about on stage, right? Well, nowadays, it's live albums aren't important. Nobody really cares anymore. Some of us still do, but for the most part, and you got some bands that just keep releasing live album after live album after live album after live album, and after a while, it's not special anymore, right? As it's some of these great bands who maybe have one or two live albums, and they're so amazing, that's like you treasure those. Like Iron Maiden comes to mind. Love Iron Maiden to death, but man, they've got so many live albums. After a while, it's just kind of like, it's like what's so special about any of them anymore, right? Well, this particular band has been around since the late 90s, mid-late 90s, and they've only got one official live album. And if you go see them live, they're really great live. I've seen them live numerous times, so it's really cool to have a live document from the great progressive metal band Symphony X, Live on the Edge of Forever. 2-disc set. This came out on Inside Out Music way back when. What year was this again? 2000. I don't remember. Let's take a look. 2001? It was probably 2002. It was recorded in 2000 and 2001 on that particular tour. All right, and here, just to show you a little bit of stuff. That's what it looks like. There's the guys in the band. The inside, of course, you got the great Russell Allen on vocals, Michael Romeo on guitars and composes everything, Michael LaPond on bass, Jason Rulo on drums, and Michael Pinella on keyboards. Great 2-disc set. You got all sorts of cool stuff on here. Again, they're touring for the On the Edge of Forever, right? So you got all sorts of cool stuff from various albums up to that point. You got Divine Wings of Tragedy, finish it off. Sea Lies is on here, right? Church of the Machines on here, Smoke and Mirrors. You got some cool stuff from the V album, the 5th album, right? Bird Serpent War is on here, Death of Balance, Candlelight Fantasia, The Eyes of Medusa. All sorts of good stuff on here. Smoke and Mirrors, classic stuff. So that is something to seek out. We got a few more for you. How about Trapeze, right? A lot of people probably would have thought that Trapeze would have kind of crumbled after Glenn Hughes went off to join Deep Purple, but that was not the case. Basically, Mel Galley, the guitar player, said, "Okay, well, I can do the vocals," right? So he became the singer of the band. Got Dave Holland, of course, on drums, and I'm trying to remember who took over on bass for this particular album. Let's see, this live album. Oh, by the way, it's Trapeze at the Boat Club, 1975. Terrific live recording. This was Pete Wright came in the band on bass and Rob Kendrick on guitar. So because Mel was now concentrating on singing and playing guitar, they added a second guitar player as well. But just terrific stuff. If you're unfamiliar with Trapeze, great kind of funky, rhythmic, heavy rock band, hard rock band. And, early on, of course, Glenn Hughes sang all the lead vocals. And then when he left, like I mentioned, Mel Galley, who, of course, went on to Whitesnake and Phenomenon afterwards. But here you've got great songs like You Are the Music, We're Just the Band, right, from the prior studio album. Jury's on here, big 14 minutes long. Starbreaker, Backstreet Love, Way Back to the Bone. Man, that song just funks all over the place. Medusa's on here. Black Cloud is on here. Big epic version of that. Sunny Side of the Street and The Raid. Great stuff. This was actually released in 2003, but recorded in 1975. Terrific Trapeze live album. The Who. God, again, The Who have some tremendous live records that everybody talks about. Of course, there's Live at Leeds, right? There's Live at the Isle of Wight. I love Isle of Wight. Amazing stuff. There's the Woodstock, right? It's all these great live recordings and things from that time period. But here's one that happened right around the same time as the Live at Leeds show and album. And this was released in 2012 officially on Polydor Records. This is at Hull, 1970, right? It's a Hull University. So this was recorded live at Hull City Hall. Oh, University, City Hall. I don't know my landmarks and things over in the UK. Sorry, guys. February 15, 1970. So it was right around the same time as Leeds, and basically, mirrors the track list. It's funny if you line up, if you go get the deluxe live at Leeds, and you get Isle of Wight and you get Hull. I mean, it's basically it's all the same show, just recorded at different places, and little subtle differences. But I would say that this is just as potent as the live at Leeds. So, like, if you're someone who has like the original live at Leeds, because live at Leeds has come out like three different times with like three different track lengths, right? So the original Live at Leeds album only has a handful of songs, right? Most of the set was cut out, right? And then you had the first reissue, which added in additional stuff, and then you had the deluxe reissue of Live at Leeds, which had the entire show, everything they played from Tommy and all the other stuff. So if you've got like maybe one of the earlier versions of Live at Leeds and you never went and bought the deluxe, but you're kind of intrigued, but you don't know if you want to go buy Live at Leeds again, I would say just go get Hull, because this is basically, again, you get all of that stuff. So, Heaven and Hell, I Can't Explain, Fortune Teller, Tattoo, Young Man Blues, Substitute, Happy Jack, I'm a Boy, Quick One While He's Away, Summertime Blues, Shaking All Over, Shaking All Over, yeah. My Generation, 16-minute long My Generation, that's just disc 1. And then disc 2 is the entire Tommy, right? Overture, It's a Boy, 1921, Amazing Journey, Sparks, Eyesight to the Blind, Christmas, The Acid Queen, Pinball, Where Do You Think It's All Right, Fiddle About, Tommy, Can You Hear Me, There's a Doctor, Go to the Mirror, Smash the Mirror, Miracle Cure, Sally Simpson, I'm Free, Tommy's Holiday Camp, and We're Not Gonna Take It. Whew! Yeah, and the recording is great. Definitely worthwhile if you've never check this out and you're a fan of Live at Leeds and you're just a fan of The Who in general. Essential. All right. Double Live Gonzo is the album by Ted Nugent that always gets talked about, right? How about Live at Hammersmith, 1979? Terrible Ted. This also came out much, much later. This was released in 1997. Just great recordings from the European tour, specifically at Hammersmith. Right here, you've got Stormtroopin', Just What the Doctor Ordered, Free for All, Dog Eat Dog, Cat Scratch Fever, Need You Bad, Paralyzed If It Don't Matter, Wang Dan, Sweet Poontang, Stranglehold, Motor City Madhouse, and Gonzo. Great recording, sounds really good, raucous crowd. There's a glimpse of Ted. This is Ted during the big beard period, right? And it's all about Ted, right? We're not going to show anybody else here. Of course, this is Ted on guitars and vocals, Charlie Hune, right, on vocals and guitar, Dave Kiswini on bass, and Cliff Davies on drums, along with Steve McKay on keyboards. So yeah, good stuff. High energy Nugent. I would say probably towards the end of like the mandatory Nugent years. I think once from the debut album, and certainly the Dukes beforehand, but I would say up until that Black Nugent album, I would say everything before that is pretty noteworthy. So this is right at the tail end of the 70s, the best era for Ted Nugent in my opinion. All right, next up, go back to a British band. This is an amazing live album from a really cool band that I don't think ever really got their due. The follow-up band that came out of the ashes of this band made it much, much bigger, but there's something about the band Free that I've always loved. This is Free Live, right? Never gets talked about, right? They always talk about those couple of studio albums from the band, but man, this is so good. So good. Recorded at various places here. We got live at Sunderland, at the Fillmore, January 1970. Other tracks recorded at Fairfield Halls, September 30th, 1970. So it's mostly tracks. There's a couple tracks from 1971, but it's mostly tracks recorded from 1970 and 71. Band touring around the world. Of course, this is Paul Rodgers and the great Paul Kossoff and company, right? Andy Fraser, and it's just killer band. There are some sizzling versions of songs you really know and love, and other stuff too. And I've long said that one of my favorite songs on here is their version of Moonshine, which is like nearly about 9 minutes long. And Moonshine is kind of like a slow bluesy tune from one of their earlier albums. And here it's just massive with this lengthy, just chill-inducing guitar solo from Paul Kossoff, which is just absolutely amazing. But you got All Right Now is on here, I'm a Mover, Be My Friend, Fire and Water is on here, Ride on a Pony, Mr. Big, The Hunter's on here. It's just great bluesy, hard rock and free. Get Where I Belong. You know, if you buy the later reissue, you get all sorts of bonus tracks on here. Trouble on Double is on here. Walk in My Shadow. You know, all sorts of stuff. And alternate versions of other songs. So yeah, this is just mandatory stuff from Free. Great live album. And last but not least, another British band, Coliseum Live. I know Coliseum were never, especially here in the States, never a big band. But and the thing about Coliseum is that it was always kind of hard to, you know, what do you call Coliseum? Like, they get labeled as a prog band, but when you really listen to them, you know, they're more kind of like a jazz rock and blues band, right? But they got some intricate arrangements and things like that. So kind of not an easy band to label or anything like that. I think that kind of hurt them in the end. But man, this live album is so good. Double disc set here. The original album was a single, but here when you buy the reissue, you get a bonus disc of all sorts of extra tracks on here. And this was Esoteric reissue. And just a really great band when you look at the list of people who played in this band and on this live one. So you got John Heisman on drums, of course, one of the great British drummers of all time, jazz, rock, and prog drummers of all time. Just amazing. He's basically the band leader here. Dick Hextall-Smith, okay, wonderful sax player. Most of these guys have great pedigree on the jazz scene, right? Dave Greenslade on organ and various keyboards and vibes. Of course, he would then go on to leave this band and go on to front his own prog band called Greenslade. You got Dave Clemson, terrific underrated guitar player, of course, who left this band to go on and join Humble Pie, basically replaced Peter Frampton in Humble Pie. You got the great Mark Clark on bass and vocals. Of course, Mark Clark is play with lots of the bands, Uriah Heep, one of them. And then Chris Farlow on vocals, right? Chris Farlow, of course, also played with Atomic Rooster, sang with Atomic Rooster, right? But of course, he got kind of really made a name for himself here in this band. And Chris Farlow's got more of that kind of that bluesy voice, right? Definitely a unique singing style. So here, all sorts of cool stuff that kind of bridge a lot of the things we talked about. Some great playing on here. Some of my favorite guitar soloing from Clem Clemson is on this live album. So tremendous stuff if you haven't listened to it. Just good, classy, bluesy, jazzy rock, right? I guess. I tend to have an issue with calling Coliseum prog, right? But, you know, they do have some moments. But yeah, all sorts of cool stuff on here. There's even, if you get the reissue, you get the whole Valentine suite on disc 2, which is really, really cool. That's more of kind of like their prog stuff. That's when people think about Coliseum and prog, they think the Valentine suite album. So, but yeah, all sorts of good stuff on here. Skellington is just terrific on here. Holy moly. Great stuff. Anyway, that is my last pick for today. So again, you got all sorts of stuff here. You got Coliseum, you got Free, Ted Nugent, The Who, Trapeze, Symphony X, 2 from Mahavishnu, which makes 1, really, Status Quo, 2 from Queen, and 2 from Miles Davis. So there you go. More of these to come. I've got loads and loads more to do, so it's funny when I decide to do like a show like this or a series like this, I realize just how many damn live albums I owned. It's just crazy, right? So, yeah, there will be more. So tune in probably next month for another episode. Until then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before we leave. Also, down below, we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations as well as our merch page. So thanks in advance for all your support there. And we'll see you soon here on the channel with more stuff. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I am Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.